Welcome to Global Combat Arena, where true fight fans come for the stories that shaped combat sports forever. Today, we're dissecting what many consider the most explosive and controversial moment in MMA history. UFC President Dana White called it the biggest fight in UFC history. Little did he know that what happened after the final bell would transcend the sport itself. October 6, 2018, Las Vegas. T-Mobile Arena. The energy was electric. The main event, undefeated champion Khabib Nurmagomedov versus the notorious Conor McGregor. It wasn't just a fight, it was East versus West, discipline versus showmanship, respect versus provocation. And a grudge so deep and personal that the octagon's steel walls ultimately couldn't contain it. This is the complete story of UFC 229, and the aftermath that forever changed the landscape of professional fighting. The buildup. To truly grasp the magnitude of that night, we need to rewind and examine the powder keg that had been meticulously assembled over months. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 26-year-old. The Russian eagle from the mountains of Dagestan. A devout Muslim. A wrestling virtuoso who had never lost a single round in the UFC. Quiet and respectful outside the cage, utterly dominant inside it. Conor McGregor, the Irish phenomenon, the first ever UFC double champion. A striking specialist with knockout power and unmatched psychological warfare, the biggest draw in combat sports history whose trash talk was as lethal as his left hand. Their collision course began in April 2018 at UFC 223. Khabib confronted Conor's training partner Artem Lobov in a hotel hallway, grabbing him by the neck after Lobov allegedly disrespected Khabib in an interview. The response was swift and shocking. McGregor and his entourage flew across the Atlantic to Brooklyn, stormed the Barclays Center, and in a moment of madness, Conor hurled a metal dolly through a bus window, a bus carrying Khabib and other fighters. Glass shattered, fighters were injured, bouts were canceled, McGregor was arrested. What started as fight promotion had crossed into something darker. In the press conferences that followed, McGregor attacked everything Khabib held sacred: his family, his religion, his homeland, his relationships. The psychological warfare had turned personal. Dana White later admitted, "The bad blood between these guys is as real as it gets." The UFC, sensing unprecedented commercial potential, transformed this genuine animosity into marketing gold. The stage wasn't just set, it was on fire. Fight night. October 6th finally arrived. The numbers were staggering. 2.4 million pay-per-view buys, shattering all UFC records. Over 20,000 fans packed T-Mobile Arena. Celebrities from Drake to Matt Damon ringside. The largest global viewership in UFC history. The arena atmosphere was unlike anything before. Divided, hostile, explosive. Irish flags waved alongside Dagestani banners. Security was doubled. As Bruce Buffer's iconic voice introduced the fighters, you could feel the tension crackle through the screen. Round 1, Khabib wasted no time. 20 seconds in, he secured a takedown and proceeded to do what he always does: maul his opponent. McGregor, pinned against the cage, spent most of the round defending. The champion's ground control was suffocating. Round 2 brought the unexpected. In a striking exchange, Khabib, the wrestler, landed an overhand right that dropped McGregor, the striker. The arena collectively gasped. Khabib followed with relentless pressure, nearly finishing the fight. Round 3, McGregor found his rhythm. Better footwork, cleaner strikes. He became the first fighter ever to win a round against Nurmagomedov. But close observers noted something troubling. McGregor was grabbing Khabib's gloves and shorts, violations that referee Herb Dean largely missed. Round 4, Khabib returned to his game plan. A perfectly executed takedown transitioned to back control. As McGregor tried to defend, Nurmagomedov locked in a neck crank. The pressure was unbearable. McGregor tapped. It was over. Khabib Nurmagomedov had defended his title. The Eagle remained undefeated at 27-0. But the night was far from over. The chaos. In the seconds following victory, something snapped in Khabib. He stood over McGregor, shouting. Then, instead of celebrating, he removed his mouthpiece, hurled it aside, and locked eyes with someone outside the cage. Dylan Dennis, McGregor's jiu-jitsu coach who had allegedly been taunting him throughout the fight. What happened next sent shockwaves through combat sports. Khabib scaled the octagon fence and launched himself into the crowd, feet first, directly at Dennis. Simultaneously inside the cage, McGregor was confronted by Khabib's teammates Zubaira Tukhugov and Islam Makhachev. Punches were thrown from both sides. The T-Mobile Arena descended into pandemonium, security guards scrambling, cornermen jumping fences, police rushing in from every entrance, fans in disbelief, some filming, others joining the chaos. Dana White, ashen-faced, refused to wrap the belt around Khabib's waist, fearing it would incite further violence from the crowd. "We could have had a riot of 20,000 people," White would later say. The broadcast team struggled to make sense of what they were witnessing. Joe Rogan called it the darkest moment in UFC history. As both fighters were escorted separately from the arena, the image was clear. This wasn't just post-fight adrenaline. This was years of hatred, cultural conflict, and personal vendetta erupting on the biggest stage possible. The aftermath was swift and severe. The Nevada State Athletic Commission launched an immediate investigation. Both fighters' purses were withheld. Khabib eventually received a $500,000 fine, 10% of his purse, a 9-month suspension, mandatory anti-bullying PSA requirements McGregor faced, a $50,000 fine, a 6-month suspension criticism for his pre-fight rhetoric. 3 of Khabib's team members were banned from the UFC, prompting the champion to threaten retirement if they weren't reinstated. The incident dominated headlines far beyond sports media. It raised uncomfortable questions about the line between promotion and provocation, about cultural respect, and about the UFC's responsibility in escalating rivalries. In his post-fight press conference, which he attended while McGregor didn't, Khabib offered not an apology but an explanation. He talked about my religion, my country, my father. He came to Brooklyn and broke bus. Why people talk about me jumping over cage? I showed respect. The rematch that fans clamored for never materialized. Khabib insisted McGregor needed 10 wins to earn another shot. McGregor continued to provoke online, but the rivalry remained unresolved in the octagon. 3 years later, what does UFC 229 represent in the history of mixed martial arts? For Khabib, it was both a stain and a statement. He proved his dominance as a fighter, but showed vulnerability as a man provoked beyond his limits. He would fight only twice more before retiring undefeated at 29 euro, his legacy secure but forever linked to that chaotic night. For McGregor, it marked the beginning of a decline. His aura of invincibility shattered. He never recaptured the magic of his earlier career, going 1-3 in his next 4 fights. The line between calculated promotion and genuine animosity had blurred, perhaps irrevocably. For the UFC, it provided undeniable commercial success, but raised ethical questions about exploiting cultural and religious differences for profit. The promotion tightened security protocols and became more cautious with explosive rivalries. For the sport itself, UFC 229 represented a pivotal moment when MMA's mainstream exposure reached unprecedented heights, albeit for complex reasons. It highlighted both the raw authenticity that attracts fans and the dangerous proximity to genuine hostility that threatens its legitimacy. UFC 229 wasn't just a championship fight. It was a cultural flashpoint where sport, spectacle, honor, and hatred collided in spectacular fashion. It proved that in this most primal of sports, the human element, with all its passion, pride, and imperfection, will always transcend technique and training. Khabib showed that discipline conquers chaos inside the cage. McGregor demonstrated that words have consequences beyond promotion. And the fans learned that sometimes, the most compelling stories in combat sports are written after the final bell. UFC 229 remains the highest-selling pay-per-view in company history. A night when millions witnessed not just athletic competition, but human drama in its rawest form. If you're fascinated by the fights that define eras and the stories behind the spectacle, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share your thoughts on UFC 229 in the comments below. This is Global Combat Arena, where combat sports history isn't just remembered, it's understood.